Hey everyone, welcome to Desktop Discourse with SDI. We have Maddie, we have Mikey, we have Marisa here today to talk about peer connectivity, and we're going to let you guys know how to navigate Columbia College and just being a college student.
All right, so we have a few questions. I'm trying. I was in the process of trying to get them up as Isaiah was introducing us. There they are. Okay. All right, so we have a few questions that we're going to answer. Our first question is, how do you personally connect with peers outside of class?
Outside of class, it changes every year for me. Your first year here, connecting outside of class is kind of daunting, scary, nerve-wracking a lot of the times. I think universally, whether or not, if you have any added stress or depression or anxiety and stuff like that, just, putting yourself out there in a new environment is very difficult to do for a lot of people. So the first year, the way that looked for me was going to student orgs, going to Black Student Union. That was the first, that's where I wanted to be social, and I had the energy to be social, and I had the mindset of being social and of meeting new people. Obviously, there's places like the CAF on campus. For me, that wasn't a place where I necessarily wanted to meet people because that's where I wanted to just eat. But that's kind of how it was the first year. The second year, it looked like me also being more involved on campus and me being more involved with student orgs, but also me, us in classrooms not being afraid to exchange numbers and stuff in terms of just, let's work on our project together, exchange numbers. And if anything happens outside of that, that's cool or whatever. And for me personally, junior year, being my, second year as an RA, experience unique to me. I was able to, meet people as their RA and also meet other people through doing a lot more events. I'm coming to SDI events, other college-wide events, still student org work. So that's been how that's been working. And then this year is more just working off those established friendships that I have, and us being older. A lot of my friends living off campus or people I want to hang out with living off campus. It's easier to, we're older now, so it's easier to be like, hey, do you want to hang out one day? The nerves kind of subside as time goes on. My process is a little bit longer, but definitely those nerves do subside, and reaching out to people to hang out or to do something is kind of where I am now, as opposed to relying too much on campus because I'm a senior and I've gotten that already on campus, but I've taken what I've gotten from campus connections and using them now.
I agree. I think after the first year, at least for me, it was a lot easier to start really connecting, because I think for the first year, it was kind of I'm just adjusting to everything. It was a very new environment for me to be in the city. So I was kind of just adjusting, and I was also very shy, very anxious for a while. So the first year was kind of probably the hardest for me to reach out and connect. And it was kind of hard for me. I went to Pride Club, so I met some people there. So I do think clubs and organizations and events are really good to connect with peers. And then I met a couple people in some of my classes, and that was really it. It's kind of hard to connect to peers a lot in classes and to make friends in classes. But I was able to in my freshman year. And then my sophomore year, a lot of things changed, and I was more, especially in the second semester, I started connecting with people more, and being more outgoing, and just I met a lot of people through people I know that I ended up becoming very close with. I joined SDI in my sophomore year, so that was definitely something that helped me feel connected. Right now it's a bit more difficult just because of COVID, to feel connected as much, but like Isaiah said, I just build off of those relationships I already have, that I know I can rely on.
Yeah, I feel it's I'm full-time staff and I'm not a student, but I like empathize so much this year, because for me, like I'm still grappling with how to connect with peers this year. I think this year, like there's so much stuff that we have experienced and done that my mind just goes to, like, in any other year, I would have been in friends' places, apartments, up all night talking or watching things on TV, listening to like podcasts and debriefing for hours that just hasn't been there. And I think for myself, I'm still, like, to be totally real, I'm holding that I'm still grappling with how to do that. I found a lot of grounding in like FaceTiming friends and Zooming friends and like listening to podcasts, like externally process this. But it's still really hard to hold. And it's really wild to be like collectively still trying to like figure out how do we do this. So I just want to name for like me, I'm trying to hold that, like, how do we still do this?
Personally, I went to a lot of floor events like in my dorm in my first year, in my first couple years. And I didn't really, this is very bad of me, but I ended up leaving convocation very early in my freshman year. So I didn't learn a lot about all of the things that were available to me. But what I ended up doing was starting a group called the Trans Student Union last year. And that has been an excellent way for me to connect with peers, even now still. The Trans Student Union exists to find community among other trans folks. And it's been really awesome. We have meetings over Zoom and we meet every week. And that is like my primary source of like connection with other people that aren't like in my bubble. So yeah, I've really enjoyed that. And I think that that's been one solid way to connect to folks. And our next question is, how often do you connect with peers outside of class? Personally, I connect once a week for TSU. I do have a couple group chats from classes that have just kind of maintained themselves, and somehow like groups from projects have become like groups of like somewhat friends, and that's been really nice.
I guess like as often as I can, when I have like the mental energy to, especially, and I especially like try to, like when I'm not like super overwhelmed with like classes and stuff, but like it also is nice to be able to connect with someone when I am. But also like probably like I try to with like my closest like peers, I guess, like a couple times a week at least. And like I just try, and not even like seeing them like outside of like school, like even if it's just like texting or like FaceTiming or something, like I try and like keep those bonds, especially now.
Yeah, I've done my best to stay in contact with folks and to maintain certain friendships. I'm more of a person that, like, when people are closer to me or like the friends I have, I'm not someone who habitually reaches out or anything like that because of what I have to go through on my own daily basis. I'm figuring things out for myself and making sure that like doing my own self work and making sure I have the energy to do it. But I reach out when I can, and a lot of people know, how I process friendships and information and relationships. So it's understanding when we don't talk for a few months or so, but we can just pick up where we left off, because that's the energy that we usually would develop. But I usually try to reach out probably every couple weeks or so outside of the people I talk to every day. But other than that, like people that I want to hang out with, I do reach out to every once in a while. But now in COVID, it's even more difficult because now it's like, do you even want to leave the house, or do you want someone else to come into your home? Even though you really want to, but it's like, it's in terms of safety, it's kind of hard to, gauge that sometimes. And I can get really stressed or overwhelmed thinking about that kind of stuff. Or if I'm being like annoying by reaching out, which there's no evidence to like support that, but just what I go through. So there's that, but it's been difficult now with COVID, like hanging out with people in a physical space, but we try our best to stay connected. Maybe like do a social distance walk or something, or just FaceTime or text is usually where we are now.
Yeah, I think I'm reaching out to friends or somebody, or they're reaching out to me almost daily. I think my Libra self collects a lot of like external processing people. So as we're doing this like collective grappling, for me, since March has been a lot of grappling like with somebody, either talking just out loud and processing, talking about like experiences or articles or podcasts or something like that. There's been a lot of processing that way, and it's been kind of like the same couple folks for months. It's also been really interesting, I think, for me lately. Like, I feel like we've hit this COVID fatigue where folks are just getting deep down their list of reaching out to folks. I was talking to a friend and I got a text from somebody, this was last week, just said, "Hey, how have you been?" And the last time I heard from this person was 2008 in high school. I'm like, that's a lot to sum up, but that was just interesting to me, that I think folks are just like, how we reach out, whether that be in like a closer group, in a wider group, much wider group, or different, is just like, there's been a shift. And I think that's worth like spending time with.
So our next question is, what would be your advice to students struggling to make connections outside of class?
And in our current climate, I think probably the best way is to reach out to folks online via our Columbia community, because especially for younger students, it's because a lot of folks are online now because of COVID. Either it's like our campus groups app or whatever, or it's just on social media, like Canvas or like all that kind of stuff where you can like reach out to someone and like probably create like a group chat or something like that. That's probably the best way to do it right now, because everyone's probably more open to a technology kind of based introduction and like getting to know people in that kind of sphere. Also because the campus is like almost like no one's almost there, so it's kind of hard to even see people outside of that. And like I said earlier, even meeting people or making friends is hard, even in a regular kind of world that we would normally live in terms of face-to-face in-person stuff. That's already kind of difficult. But there's been a decent transition to the online world. There's student orgs that you can still like join and like find community in. Those have moved entirely online as well. So that's also available to like understanding like where those people are and like what interests you may have, or maybe interests that you don't have, but you might want to be, with that group of people, or like, just cultural based organizations and stuff like that, interest based, all that kind of things. And I think that that's probably the best way right now of staying connected or making new friends. And then when the campus reopens and we're more not as much social distancing or whatnot, just meeting in those places and like just sitting down in certain places like the student center or N618 at SDI or anywhere else on campus. It's like some people are prone to just come up to you and say, "Hi, how are you doing?" Or maybe one day you'll have the energy or the motivation to do that yourself, to just interact with someone in a common space. That's something that's, I think, happens at Columbia a lot, because I've had a few instances where I'm just sitting down, just doing my homework, not even aware of anything that's going on, and someone just comes up to me and starts talking to me, and I'm like, for me, I don't really know how to handle that most times, so I'm kind of awkward in those situations. But I know how to handle the kind of like back and forth of a conversation and exchange sometimes contact information or whatever. Um, but yeah, in those meeting spaces would also be a great place to go, even if you just want to be surrounded by people and have that energy. And you might have one day, you know, someone approach you, or you may have the desire to go approach someone else and strike up a conversation or a friendship or something like that.
Yeah, I agree. I guess it's a lot harder right now, I think, to find ways to connect with people outside of class. But like for right now, I guess I think like having class group chats or like still like attending like events from like different clubs and like events that like not clubs, like events that offices like SDI have. Like we're still doing like Yanni's like movie week, and just all these like different events where like people can like come to them and like come together and like try and like connect with peers, even though it's definitely a lot harder right now.
Yeah, as staff at the college, this is something I think we've been thinking about a lot. Is that at the school, like I think we tell you all a lot, like you have people and use them like for your safety planning, for care, for joy, for grounding, for a lot. Like you have people, and we bring it up a lot to like use that because that's how we have to operate. And I can't imagine a world where we don't use those resources. But I think like something that I think collectively our institution is struggling with is like we say that so much, and like you all said, this is a very isolating year. Especially I'm thinking of like new students who may have moved here with a room to themselves in a city that can feel so cold so quickly if you don't know folks, or if you're at home in your bedroom. Like those can be physically separating, and I think we're just like collectively running on fumes. And I think it can be really hard to ask for like support or connections when we like, the fumes I have are like the fumes that make myself coffee, that do my like bare minimum checklist sometimes. And that's it. So I don't know, I think we need to like institutionally grapple with this a lot more. In that I think y'all have found so many really wonderful ways to care for your peers and yourselves. But I don't think the answer from the institution has been sufficient, if not effective at all. For me, a lot of times when I feel those ways, especially, I don't know, I think about like when I moved after undergrad to a city in a different state where I knew no one. Some of my best friends came from, I went to this tea shop every night to just buy tea and read. And one night, the people working there, I was like, do y'all want to hang out tomorrow? I need friends. It worked, and they became some of my best friends, and they're some of the best friends to this day. But that takes so much like energy at the best of times to do, and I recognize that because like we don't have that right now, and I think that's something we have to grapple with a bit more. I keep a lot of like podcasts close, a lot of books close that help me like ground myself a bit more. So when I don't feel like I have those connections to peers or people, I can connect in some way to content and people who are still processing that in a way that might not be face to face, but is still something.
My advice to students struggling to make connections outside of class is, first of all, take care of yourself. And a lot of times, having connections can be taking care of yourself, but if you are focusing on making sure that you in yourself feel secure, it will be a lot easier to reach out to others. my next bit of advice is to take advantage of any sort of connections that you do make in class to turn it into an outside of class experience. Something that I've noticed with a lot of my teachers is that they offer up kind of time for students to like talk amongst ourselves, either like at the beginning of class when we're waiting for everyone to get there, or towards the end of class. And I'm not gonna encourage people to like talk in the private chat during class, but like that does exist. And you do have outlets where like you could reach out to one of your classmates if you wanted to give them a compliment or something like that and just kick off a conversation. And lastly, I don't know how many clubs are still meeting virtually. I know the Trans Student Union is still meeting virtually, but if you're trans, come check us out. And our last question is, do you think that there are good and bad ways to connect with people in a time of isolation?
I don't know if there's any bad ways to connect with someone, unless someone just comes off like really, like they're really aggressive in how they talk to someone and like just kind of playfully gives like insults or something like that, but you don't know someone and you might be joking and it's over online and something like that. Maybe that's a bad way to kind of start up a conversation with someone, especially someone you don't really know. But I think the best way to do it, I think the best way that you can like connect with other people is to make sure that you like want to connect with other people, in a sense that like you're taking care of yourself so that you can give that energy and you can like not have to deal with hopefully not any burnout from that. I say that because that's something I deal with sometimes, is like, I would want to connect with someone, but I know that after the initial like, oh, hey, how are you doing? I missed you, or whatever, I'm thinking about you, whatever the conversation will start off with, I may not be able to continue that conversation. So I want to make sure that like I'm able to continue a conversation, to continue an interaction with someone before I kind of go into it, because sometimes I don't. Sometimes I have the energy to just be like, hey, thinking about you, hope all is well, and just leave it at that. And maybe they respond like, oh, same here. And that, to me, sometimes I'm content with that. Other times I want to like have a really big conversation. So I'll kind of keep it going or flowing like that. So making sure I take care of myself before I reach out to anyone. And also when someone reaches out to me, letting them know like, hey, I'm not feeling the best right now. I'd love to talk just a little bit later, or like rescheduling things if, the day of I'm just not feeling well, but you had these plans for a couple of days or whatever. I'll, be honest and be like, hey, I'm having a mental health day. I need to, I didn't wake up feeling too good, or the day hasn't gone too well for me. I'm going to like stay home, but we can reschedule kind of thing. Make sure you put yourself first in those kind of situations so you don't suffer any kind of like social burnout or drain or anything like that, or like fatigue, because it can happen and it can just make things, and you don't want to like go to a space where you want to be social, but you're just like, within yourself a little bit. It's not usually the best feeling, because then for me, I feel like very isolated in a space where there's people around or whatever. And I don't usually want to do that. I want to be as present as possible and give off the full energy that I can give off that day. So yeah, kind of just like making sure you take care of yourself first so that you can have, a good and healthy interaction for you and for the person you're reaching out to or connecting with or hanging out with.
Yeah, I don't think there's necessarily like a wrong way to connect with someone right now, as long as it's something like healthy. But like right now, things are like very mentally draining a lot of the time. There's a lot of like stress for everyone right now, for like a lot of different reasons. So even like interactions, like at least like for me, can be like mentally draining sometimes. Like sometimes I just don't have the energy. So it is like really about like putting yourself first, making sure that like this is fine for you, and like if you feel like you shouldn't feel guilty if you're like not able to reach out to people at this time, but like when you're ready and when you can, it's good to reach out to people and still feel those connections and to keep those important relationships going.
Yeah, I'm glad you said that. I feel like we've been learning so much about reaching out this year. I think for me, anything that just feels not as healthy is just like maybe overly scripted or overly this. Like how I reach out to one person looks totally different than how I reach out to like a different person. Or even how I like to be connecting to can look different. Like y'all said, day to day. Like sometimes it's a really long conversation. Sometimes it's just a like, I'm thinking about you, I'm here, period. And relying, like holding that all of those are connections and really healthy, and not trying to feel like, oh my gosh, we didn't reach like this check-in or this length or something, or it didn't look like how I heard it could look like on this video. So maybe it wasn't as effective or holistic as it could have been, especially as I'm trying to build new peers, right? It can look in a lot of different ways. And I think holding ourselves to this kind of expected script is not something we should hold ourselves to right now.
I think you all covered it really well. I think I totally agree. As long as it's not like a scripted or kind of like forced interaction, that's just like something that you're doing out of not necessarily habit, because habit and routine can also be really healthy for you. But if it's something that you're kind of forcing upon yourself, then I wouldn't recommend participating in it. And I think Isaiah touched on this. It is so possible to like bypass having a conversation with someone without ghosting them. I think that it can be very easy to just go, hey, I need to take care of myself right now. I can't talk. And that is one way to like focus on yourself in the moment. But I think that there are plenty of really good and really healthy ways to connect with people, a lot of which we've already discussed. Yeah, and I think as long as you're taking care of yourself, then there is no real way to go wrong here. So that is all of the questions that we have. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us. Does anyone have any final remarks? All right, well, this has been Desktop Discourse with Maddie, Marisa, and Isaiah. Thank you. Please like, comment, subscribe, all of those fun things. And we'll see you next time.